Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome to February 15th. It's a Tuesday. There's sports today. We won't talk about things we will not talk about. Our NBA and NHL. NBA, Waddell paid me, and Waddell got the file, but I'm not even going to go over it in the video because there's too much to talk about with college basketball, and I haven't even done NHL yet. So let's talk about college basketball and try to answer some questions that I've been getting about people trying to understand what all these different titles are and how to read this, and also how to manipulate this file, because we are coming up on March already. We're into the second half of February, right? So as March comes, you'll have March Madness, and I have a whole thing for March Madness and this tournament bracket and all stuff like that. But let's go through the NCAA men college basketball algorithm and talk about some things here. So we're looking at some of the games from yesterday. We're right in the middle of updating this, and I felt like it was time to do a video because it's already like 2:30. I don't even know when the games start today. It looks like at 6 o'clock, I think, is when the first game is today. I've started to bring in stats, and I'm putting yesterday's and today's in here to talk about how you view this and how you update the cube, and like I was mentioning in the beginning, what do all these things mean and how do we read this? Well, okay, so this is a pivot table that is being generated from this cube. This cube is where all your results are and all of your projections are consolidated in one big rectangle of information, basically, all right? And like this. And this is generally just going to be today's games because that's the way I set it up. But in this instance, we have 2 days games, and I've changed the date here to reflect some of the games from yesterday. And some of the games I have not updated the scores yet. I know this was a close game that went to overtime. Let's ask Google real fast if Google can answer that sucker. Let's see here. Cleveland State versus Purdue Fort Wayne college basketball score. And the answer is 98-102. Purdue Fort Wayne won that in like triple overtime or something. So it was at least one overtime. So when you update that here and put the score here, go back to this results pivot, you see we only have 21 games here right now. We're going to have 22 games when that's done. Yep, and that game showed up. Cleveland State, I remember because I bet on Cleveland State and they lost. But by that point, I had lost a lot of other games too. Algorithm did not have a fantastic day on Monday, but some things were pretty predictable, like Vermont being at 79% health. This was not at 80% health yesterday. Hartford was at 100% health before that game. Maybe a bunch of them picked up COVID from Vermonters or something. I don't know what happened here, but Hartford actually won this game outright. And because this was yesterday's health kind of showed that Vermont was hurting, my alma mater. So, all right. So that's how you would update scores if you wanted to go and update the rest of them. There's not too many that I care about. I know that the one game that we talked about yesterday actually won, which was North Carolina Central, actually did beat Coppin State in overtime, I believe. And so that did win yesterday. But there were a lot of games that didn't win. And so you need to discuss, well, what are all these things and what do they mean? Well, the reason that this list is in the order that it's in is because of the margin column right here. The margin column is the difference between this team and this team's power strengths. Their power strengths are shown right here. And their power strengths are derived from all of the stats and distribution of stats that we have in here, which will get a little altering maybe before the March Madness tournament and everything. But as for right now, this has been working okay. So the margin is supposed to show you where one team is much, much better than the other team. And that's why you're supposed to have a string of wins going down like this, because these teams are supposed to be much better. But whether or not this team is home or away matters, because home teams do better. You can see that yesterday it was 13-1, I guess, with the home teams that we had listed so far. Holy Cross, of course, lost. I did mention that yesterday. They suck. I bet them, by the way, because the algorithm said to do it. I didn't listen to myself, and I suck. It's because they have a terrible strength of schedule. So you got to look at the SOS is this team's strength of schedule, and then this opponent's SOS is this team's strength of schedule. When it's a negative number, that means that they've played a lot of bad teams, and you shouldn't really trust it as much. You want the difference, the strength of schedule difference, to be green, to be a good number, because that means that this team has played better teams than the other team. So their stats will mean a little more. They're more impactful stats because they've played better teams. If they play a bunch of terrible teams, your stats look good, right? You play a bunch of third graders, you're going to have the most points in the league, and you're going to look like an MVP, but you're not playing against good people. And in the end, you got to beat the best teams to win in the tournament. So that's why you need to have the rating compared to the best teams possible. That's what this power is, really. 100% power would be an unbeatable team that is in the top of every single category, is what a 100% power team would be in theory. You can see that the highest percentage power team that we have in the list, according to our distribution, is Gonzaga. They are almost 100% power team. Wow, interesting. So they lead in a lot of categories. And that's because they do have a strong strength of schedule, because people like to play them because they're interesting games, right? So anyway, margin I just talked about. Strength of schedule stuff I just talked about. Team of reference, what team we're talking about. The opponent, what's the team they're playing. Did the team of reference win the game? Did the team of reference cover whatever the spread was? These are odds lines offered by odds makers and bookies and stuff, and casinos and everything else. Now, this stuff right here is, obviously going to change and be dynamic, and whatever's listed here may not be the bet that you get, of course, because you're going to get something hopefully close, but it might not even be close. So whenever you look at this, you got to take that with a grain of salt and just kind of understand what the going rates are and spreads are. But there's a difference between spread and spread cover, and I think that's confusing people a little bit, which is, what is the spread cover plus number if this is the spread? And the spread cover plus is because we are actually predicting the scores of these games right here with the projected score of the team of reference and the opponent's projected score is what that is right there. Norfolk State was supposed to win 83-53 against Delaware State. That's what it's saying. So the spread cover plus is what the margin of victory is projected to be, which is 30 points here, minus whatever the spread is. The spread is right here, is almost 15. So you end up with how much do we think the algorithm says this team's going to cover the spread? Now, what's interesting is they didn't. They didn't at all. Look at that. Final margin of victory was only 3. It was a much closer game. So the projected score was wrong about the spread cover, and they didn't cover the spread. We also thought they were going to cover the spread, and they didn't. So when you're looking at spread cover numbers, well, what about negative spread cover numbers? Like, this is the fun way to look at this, is you take this and you sort by spread cover number. These would be the teams we thought were going to cover the spread the most. Look, they had terrible runs against the spread. So we were awful against the spread yesterday, which is right, because I took things like Davidson minus 12.5 and stuff. Now, this is my personal opinion on this, is any team plays to win, and the algorithm is trying to predict who will win. By how much they will win is a much more interesting question that is really, I think, more up to the random sometimes than analysis-wise. You can't ever really be sure somebody's going to win a game by more than 13 points. You just can't. Maybe a couple points I would say yes, because at the end of the game, if they're leading, they'll get fouled, they'll get free throws, they'll win by more than a couple points, but not these numbers. So when you look at spread cover numbers and you see these massive spreads, it makes me want to say, I don't want to care about these big ones as much, because these teams still, many of them won the game, although Vermont lost because of health here. St. Louis lost. Cleveland State lost in double overtime. But a lot of the other ones won and just didn't cover the spread. And teams we didn't think were going to cover the spread are down here in negative spread cover number. And 3 of the 4 of those won. So it was just a terrible day, at least with the scores that I recorded here for yesterday. It was just not a good day, and that happens sometimes. The key is to not, blow your bankroll in one day, because even though we've been winning a lot lately, you still are going to have bad days. So keep that in mind. I think I lost 75% of what I bet yesterday, and I only hit like one. Yeah, I hit one 3-team round robin basically with one basketball setup, and that was it. And I bet a ton of games, so it was not a good day. Now, let's talk about today, though. And one of the ways we could talk about today is by opening up this win game thing and clicking on today. And if we click on today, I've brought these games in already. And we're going to go through this and do some analysis. I mean, I guess I'm going to bet, but I really, like, I got to deposit now, kind of. Like, I just don't want to. I'm roaming around. I got money, and you're in different states. Sometimes it's really annoying. If you can't bet in one state under, like FanDuel's got like 13 states or something you can bet in. If you're moving from one state to state, you can't bet anymore. You got to try to find another way. So I'm kind of not interested in any of this today. But if you want to purchase these, that's why I'm doing this. So what would I bet? And do I have something hidden? No, I'm not supposed to. No, I think that's right. All right, let's hide this. Wow, that's a lot of a way. Oh, we got to resort this. I know why. Sorry, I just sorted stuff, and you can see how weird it is when you sort stuff. We want to sort this descending by margin, not by spread cover. Because you can see our point projections were not as good anyway. But this is sorting by margin. Where are we at? Oh, we're already past 10 minutes. Oh, well, here we go. If you stuck it out, you're gonna see what we'll do here. Well, got 36 games and very few home teams, which is really, really interesting because normally you see a lot more home teams up here. There's no home bump. Are there any home underdogs? I highly doubt it. Nope. There are 4 underdogs. Look at a really hurting Florida State team against Clemson, who's also hurting, though. Boy, I wonder if a lot of people are. I wonder that injury report did grow a lot. I noticed both when I ran NBA and ran this one. This thing got bigger and wider, so there was more reporting of injuries this week or today. You get a 10% margin with Kentucky against Tennessee. Oh, that's supposed to be a really good game, but look at the injury factor even more. You look at these toss-up games. It's a very interesting day for lines. With only a 10% margin and a 20% of Kentucky's team injured, I side with Tennessee, which is healthier and they're at home. And their line is not going to be that bad. We could open up all lines and I could show you at some point, but that's kind of whatever. Now, this one is potential winner. South Carolina against Mississippi, because Mississippi's almost a quarter of the team is injured. So even though the margin's low, the strength of schedule is a little better. That's the underdog pick right there. And potentially Wisconsin over Indiana. Slight margin, good line, slightly injured Indiana. So these two are playable, and this one actually sort of too, if you were just going to flip a coin about who's too injured to win here. If you think about Florida State losing at home, it happens when almost half their team is injured, right? I mean, it's a battle of second-string guys. So interesting underdog look today. You're not going to lose all 4 of these games the way that board looks. You might, like I said, I think you go with Tennessee and you go with the other 3 here. I won't say the L word, but that seems like the way to go. Now, what about just home teams? Because I always said you want to have home teams. Well, natural home teams that it picks, you have some okay lines down here, so we'll look at those in a second. What about anything up top here wise? Ball State just dropped a big game recently. Toledo's pretty good. -8, huh? It's too many points. All these too many points for me to think about taking the spread. If I'm going to be consistent with what I was saying earlier, that big spreads are just, you're going to win some of them and you're going to lose some of them. You're not going to consistently win them all. That's my opinion. So I'd stay away from that. The only money line, I guess, is Toledo, but that's not a good money line. This is only -380 up top, but the strength of schedule is really bad for Longwood, so that's distorted. So I don't even think that's that good either. I like where the odds makers put that line down a little bit more. This makes sense because of injured San Jose State already. All right, well, anyway, let's look at these games down here with reasonable lines. So DePaul is hurting. So Butler at an underdog line is what you do here because of this number super low. And the margin was only 7.9% to begin with. So you had a game that was going to be fairly close. And while you would normally put the edge with DePaul, this is bad. Look at the worst one on here. So when in reading this algorithm, it is saying really do not bet DePaul is what it is saying. It's not necessarily saying take Butler because they are away. But they're going to have an underdog line, and if they're going to win a game, it's going to be because of reasons like this. So in terms of a straight bet, but not like on a round robin or a parlay, Butler's underdog line might be acceptable. TCU and Iowa State. 3% margin, minus 166. Yeah, I mean, like it says, super close game. So you can't even take them on the spread. So Sacred Heart, terrible strength of schedule, so they're not even good. And they're not a good team. Look how low their ranking is. So that I would stay away from that too. Georgia Tech, slight injuries here for both teams, but they're at home. It's a very close game. It's line's right along where it should be. San Diego State injured Utah State, but it's minus 200. Rough board. Jeez. I like the underdogs better, honestly, than when I saw there on the home. I think that these three, the round robin I'm going to do is seriously, it's going to be Tennessee. Yeah, it's going to be Tennessee because they're at home, and these three, they're home and Kentucky's injured, and that's going to be my round robin for basketball if I bet today. Because it just seems one last thing we can check is the away teams. Which we have to look through them. There's a ton of them. So here you're gonna have some better lines and some interesting stuff. So away teams that are over a 20% margin, which if you want to filter out the rest of them, you just do this. You say I want an away team that can clear a 20% home bump, because these are the ones that are really supposed to win regardless of your home bump. Are these guys? And are there any decent lines and any nice injury matchups? Well, Colorado is much healthier than Oregon State, even though slightly injured. So it's a 28% margin, really. It's not 8%. It's a 28% margin. And like I said, anything that's still on this list is supposed to win, unless they're really hurting. And none of these teams are hurting much more than their opponents. So all of these are supposed to win. Now, some strength of schedules might play into that, like Liberty, bad strength of schedule here. Arkansas, bad strength of schedule here. These are actually all bad. They're all negative. So, so they've played worse teams, but these ones where they've played really terrible teams, be concerned with that. Colorado, Oregon State, pretty consistent here. They win this game on the road. Wyoming, Wyoming and New Mexico, same thing. It just lines a little worse. This should be okay with Hofstra and Elon. Michigan State over Penn State because Penn State's hurting. And this is 22% really on the road. And then all these right here are okay. They really are okay. So that's another 5-tier. The more I'm digging into today's, I actually kind of like some of this. These are okay on the money line to do that's 5 of them to do round robin by 3s or something on that. That's okay. And then if you go down to the rest of the games, here's a bad health matchup for Fordham. Here's another bad health matchup for Central Michigan. So that's an okay line for Eastern Michigan. The margin's only 11%, so it doesn't clear clears a 10% bump, but not a 20% home bump. But this, I think, puts it over the top because Central Michigan is so hurt at a quarter of their team. South Carolina, Mississippi, we talked about that. Talked about Clemson. Anything else down here? I think that's about it. So, actually an interesting day. In summary, if you stuck it out, I would say there were a good number of picks in there. I don't feel comfortable enough with those picks to put 7 of them on a big round robin. I would do something smaller like 3s or 4s because you've got an interesting 3 here And whether or not, whether or not, this seems like just a great game. And I see why Tennessee wins this game at home, because the injuries put it over the top. So even though there's a 10% margin there, I like Tennessee because they're the home team. So really these four. And then, yeah. And then your away teams that clear 20% margin. This is a good way to look at this file. And the ones that don't have bad strength of schedule differentials, although they all have negative strength of schedule differentials. Notice that. Every single one of them. That's kind of weird. However, looking at the healths, I see these 5 as acceptable, and probably you're going to hit at least 3 and probably 4 out of those 5, if not all 5, based on this, right? Probably hit at least 3 there. Then, home team wise, you could mess around with these guys at the bottom. Oh, at a 20% bump, Kentucky. Tennessee ends up being on here. See, we have a 20% home bump right now, and this changes a little bit. So another way you can look at the file is put the home bump in there and see which home teams start popping up. That home team bump is a little bit too much. A 20% home bump day is a really big bump day. Usually, I don't want to say usually because it varies all over the place, but it's somewhere between 0 and 20. So if you took 10, does Tennessee pop on there? They still don't, right? No, they don't. It's interesting looks. All right, guys, it's a super long video, but I know people are asking about how to read stuff and all the things you can do with this, and that's why I'll break it down in these videos and try to explain how all this stuff works and how you can really dig in and find what a good pick is and what isn't. Because basically, the fewer picks you make where you spend a lot of time and they're really good picks, and you stay away from marginal stuff, the more successful and reliable you're going to be getting those wins. That's what I've seen in the past, and that's the way I approach it. So good luck, and may all your picks be winning.